This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, as well as our weekly title, Marijuana Today, and the excellent Green Rush podcast, as well as our new show, Weed Wonks, with Jordan and Andrew. You can find Weed Wonks everywhere you find podcasts, or you can open up weedwonks.com with wonks spelled W-O-N-K-S. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Thursday, October 17th, 2019, and you're tuned in to episode 820 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We have an all Kyle Yeager set of top headlines today, as Mr. Yeager pounced all over the cannabis news cycle over at Marijuana Moment. Our top Kyle headline today looks at remarks made by an official with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in a hearing before a House Appropriations subcommittee over the current vape health scare. CDC Principal Deputy Director Ann Schuchat was questioned by prohibitionist Republican Congressman Andy Harris of Maryland, who sought to push the argument that THC vaping was to blame for the large number of hospital visits and 20 or so deaths being attributed to the use of vaporizers. But Deputy Director Schuchat made it clear that it was more accurate to say that illicit market THC vaporizers seemed to carry most of the blame, and that licensed legal dispensaries were not considered to be a major vector. You can pop over to Kyle's piece on this one for more and to see a video of the hearing, but pretty important stuff. Swinging out to New Mexico, we have a just-released report published yesterday on the best practices for legalizing adult-use cannabis in that state. The report was developed by a committee of experts formed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and contains both recommendations for how a legal taxed and regulated sales system should be built, but also projections for how much revenue could be generated with legalization. This one is super instructive no matter where you do business, so another one I'd suggest you open up in full. You can find the full report yourself over at Marijuana Moment. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Today's final top story by Kyle Yeager is a well-researched roundup of top Canadian politicians and political parties ahead of a big election on Monday, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party could lose control of the federal government. Kyle dives into the 6 leading political parties and their respective leaders and parses how each approaches marijuana policy reform. If you are at all involved up in Canada, this is a must-read. And even if you're not, it's never a bad idea to know what's going on next door, especially when we're talking about Canada and legal cannabis. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, which makes this podcast, our weekly flagship title, Marijuana Today, as well as the Green Rush podcast and our newest show, the just-launched Weed Wonks. With our growing podcast network, we can deliver the best audience in legal cannabis to you so that you can tell your legal marijuana marketing story. Podcast advertising is super effective and one of the best ways around today to spend a marketing dollar. We have national reach here at MJ Today Media with listeners in all the right places. And because we do so much demographic surveying, we have a solid handle on who makes up our listenership. I hope you're not too surprised to hear that most of you are working in the legal marijuana industry or are actively trying to transition in. That's exactly the kind of audience that you want to reach with your company's message. Our listeners are the industry's decision makers and future decision makers. Right now, we have just a bit of space left in our sponsorship calendar, so don't delay. Email me at shay@mjtodaymedia.com to learn more. That's shay@mjtodaymedia.com, with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. All right, time for the blitz. Colorado-based marijuana cultivator Los Sueños Farms, which is in the process of being acquired by fellow Colorado cannabis firm Medicine Man, is reporting that a recent winter storm ruined half of its outdoor crop, or around 20,000 plants in all. Company founder Bob DeGabrielle told Bart Shainman over at Marijuana Business Daily that the loss wasn't total, in that the frost-damaged plants will still be able to be sold to concentrates makers, but the overall cost will likely be in the millions. This is an instructive story as Los Sueños counts itself as the largest legal outdoor cannabis cultivator in the US, so I think it's instructive to see how it responds to extreme weather events like this, because the world's climate and weather is only getting more turbulent. Yesterday in Florida, the state Supreme Court agreed to consider an appeal by Governor Ron DeSantis in a case involving the state's choice to require vertical integration within its legal medical marijuana program. The state is fighting to keep that vertical integration structure, which requires license holders to handle every step of the cannabis production cycle, from growing through dispensing. Back in July, a panel of judges with the appeals court ruled that vertical integration ran counter to the constitutional amendments legalizing medical marijuana that was passed by voters in 2016. The state appealed that decision, and after a little bit of legal wrangling, we find ourselves here today. Now looking forward to the state Supreme Court taking the issue up. Lawyers for the state of Florida have until November 5th to file their initial brief, so we'll have to keep watching as things roll out. Canada's Hexo Corporation is introducing a new legal marijuana flower brand that will sell for just $4.45 a gram Canadian, which is more than $1 less than the average price that illicit market consumers are paying for their cannabis. The new Original Stash line of flower will only be sold in 1-ounce packages, which will go for just over $126 per, again in dollars Canadian. This is newsworthy today because of the issues Canada has been having over the last year in deploying adult use legalization, so a cannabis that's pitched as being competition to illicit options is fairly interesting. Marijuana listing firm Weedmaps announced yesterday that it is laying off around 100 employees, or a quarter of its total workforce, blaming the slow development of the legal industry in California and Massachusetts, as well as the overall tightness in the capital markets. Weedmaps CEO and founder Chris Beals broke the news over Twitter. Coming back with one more story today, we have Kyle Yeager picking up on a fun bit of knowledge from a recent Howard Stern show where rapper and entrepreneur Snoop Dogg talked with Howard and fellow cannabis enthusiast Seth Rogen about his personal blunt roller, a person who gets paid $50,000 a year to follow Snoop around and always keep him stocked up with blunts ready to smoke. Besides the salary, Snoop's blunt roller gets free marijuana and obviously travels all around the world in fine Snoop style. Not a bad job to have. David Bienenstock over at Leafly pulled together all the different ways that the mainstream media has botched the ongoing vape health scare, mainly through conflating related but separate issues and in not being as specific as needed when talking about the causes. As we reported on Here Lots, the exact cause of the vape health scare isn't known yet, but it does seem pretty clear that the illicit cannabis market is mostly to blame, as we've seen little to no troubles as a result of the use of regulated and legal THC vapes. That super important point is often not brought up in mainstream media coverage. As big as this story is, it's probably a good idea to dive into this one in full. And finally for today, we have an update out of Chicago where plans that originally called for the exclusion of legal marijuana dispensaries entirely from the downtown area have been slightly amended, with Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot heeding to some of the pressure by local officials who have pointed out that the city can't really afford to leave too much cannabis business on the table with large bans. The new zoning ordinance just approved by the Chicago City Council will allow for dispensaries to be open in the North River part of downtown. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.